can't breathe, hands up, don't shoot, no justice, no peace. I could go back to the 1800s and tell you things that we were saying to stop being bullied, beaten, killed, and dismantled by the police.
Ooh, what's going on? Welcome back to the 1776 Report, the #1 YouTube channel for exposing the stupidity of the woke left. In today's video, we're going to be exposing the stupidity of ESPN, the worldwide leader of sports. It was the go-to for every kid in my generation. We would wake up, grab some breakfast, go sit down, turn on ESPN, and watch SportsCenter to see what happened in the world of sports the night before. But something shifted over the last several years, and that directly correlates with Disney, woke Disney purchasing ESPN. Ever since Disney acquired ESPN, ESPN made the decision to go woke and push a woke political agenda. And that is causing ESPN to suffer financially, and they had to fire a bunch of their woke on-air personalities. ESPN is cutting around 20 on-air stars in a dramatic round of layoffs. ESPN is laying off some of its biggest names, including Jeff Van Gundy, Max Kellerman, Keyshawn Johnson, Susie Colbert, and Jalen Rose. Jalen Rose being one of the wokest of the woke, one of the biggest idiots on television. ESPN made a major mistake. You see, sports was a place where people of all creeds, religion, and races could go and unite. But ESPN made the decision to make sports divisive. And instead of talking about what happened in the game or what they think will happen in an upcoming game, they decided to push their own personal political agendas. And that isolated and pissed off millions of their viewers. And they said to themselves, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to punish myself and watch this nonsense. Now ESPN is suffering financially and having to fire a bunch of its biggest names. ESPN informed all of its employees Friday morning of the forthcoming cuts on an internal website, according to a memo obtained by the New York Post. At the beginning of Disney's 3 rounds of layoffs, sources told the Post there would be no sacred cows. They just hired Pat McAfee, who they think is going to save the network. I disagree with that decision. Even though Pat McAfee has millions of viewers on his YouTube channel, people are angry at ESPN. And even though they like Pat McAfee, potentially, they're not going to follow Pat McAfee to ESPN. So ESPN is firing all of these big money on-air woke personalities in order to make financial space for Pat McAfee. They also let go of Matt Hasselbeck and Steve Young, Todd McShay, LaFonso Ellis, Ashley Brewer, and David Pollack. A bunch of big name analysts, a bunch of big name talking heads that have been there for 20 plus years. ESPN is losing millions of viewers. Their viewership and ratings are in the toilet. They tried to create a streaming service in ESPN Plus. It has been a disaster and a failure in its own right. They thought streaming was going to save the network, but it's just been a cluster. It has been a terrible catastrophe at ESPN. Here are some of the top woke moments in ESPN's history. These are the moments that ruined an iconic network. Just like Bud Light was ruined by a woke clown, ESPN was ruined by a bunch of woke clowns. Here's one: Sarah Spain calling Tampa Bay Devil Rays MLB baseball players bigots for not wanting to put gay pride patches on their jerseys. Take a listen.
Tampa pitcher Jason Adams to the Tampa Bay Times. Hard decision, because ultimately we all said we want them to know that they are welcome and loved here. But when we put it on our bodies, I think a lot of guys decided that it's just a lifestyle that maybe, not that they look down on or anything or differently, it's just that maybe we don't want to encourage we believe in Jesus, who's encouraged us to live a lifestyle that would abstain from that behavior. Sarah Spain, how does that all come off to you?
Pride is about inclusion, so you don't love them and you don't welcome them if you're not willing to wear the patch. And calling it a lifestyle reveals to me that you've done not even a modicum of research or understanding on this topic, which is what tends to happen when a privileged class isn't affected by things. This is not just about baseball. That religious exemption BS, which is used in sport and otherwise, also allows for people to be denied health care, jobs, apartments, children prescription.
Religious exemption BS is used as a mask, according to Sarah Spain, in order to discriminate against the LGBTQ LMNOPQ community to deprive them of children, healthcare, jobs, and a bunch of other stuff. Remember, this is a class that is discriminated against. The LGBTQ community, they have their own month, but remember, they are discriminated against. This idiot, Sarah Spain, is part of the reason that ESPN is having to fire 20-plus personalities. And we move on. We have another one. On-air tears after Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. Malika Andrews pitched a temper tantrum after Roe v. Wade was overturned on ESPN's airways. She said today the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, declaring that the constitutional right to abortion, upheld for nearly half a century, no longer exists. In less than 24 hours, we celebrated equal rights for women, and now we react to women's reproductive rights being taken away. That is a complete joke. First of all, right here, the constitutional right for abortion never existed. You think the founding fathers sat down at the table and said, we are going to pin in a constitutional right for abortion? I don't think so. The Supreme Court did not shoot down abortion. The Supreme Court sent the decision back to the states, which is the right decision. This is a state decision now, and I personally am not a fan of abortion, but it's a state-by-state decision. That's all the Supreme Court said, and these liberals are not smart enough to understand that. L. Duncan urges fathers to advocate for their daughters' right to have abortions. This one takes the cake.
Right now, we are taping this, and everybody in the control room is under the assumption that it is for television. And while I appreciate that they are allowing me the space to do that, I'm actually going to ask them not to put this on TV for a couple of reasons: to save my producers from worrying about placement in the show or tone out of it, which, by the way, are necessary evils when you do a TV show. Also because when you work at this place and when you sit at this desk, bad faith characters lay in wait to attack the method instead of the message. And so I'm going to deflate that hot air before it starts, because frankly, the power of reach goes well beyond just the TV platform. And I certainly learned that a couple of years ago after I shared a story about Kobe Bryant on this very SportsCenter. And if I'm being honest, the legacy of Girl Dad has always been incredibly complicated for me. Because they were Kobe's words, and ultimately I was only sharing them in the wake of unspeakable tragedy, but also because over time, what started as a touching tribute to the bond between fathers and daughters has turned mostly into a kitschy, commercialized catchphrase. I know you've seen the t-shirts. I certainly see the hashtags. You know, you're playing catch in the yard, hashtag girl dad. Father's Day pics, hashtag girl dad. Literally any content with a girl in it, girl dad. But strip girls of their constitutional rights, silence.
Where in the Constitution does it say that girls, that's the word she was using, not women, girls have a constitutional right to have abortions? It doesn't say that, Elle. It never says that in the Constitution, and nor should it. You and your woke ESPN cronies are destroying a network that millions of kids in my generation grew up loving. You destroyed it easily, could have just stayed out of politics, and ESPN would be thriving.
Back at the first half, but there are things bigger than basketball that need to be addressed at this time. Our friends, our family, our coworkers, the play. Now, normally at this time, we would take a look. Players and coaches in our community are hurting right now. And at 3 o'clock, about 8 minutes ago, our LGBTQIA+ teammates at Disney asked for our solidarity and support, including our company's support, in opposition to the parental rights in education bill in the state of Florida and similar legislation across the United States.
And a threat to any human rights is a threat to all human rights. And at this time, Courtney and I, we're going to take a pause.
A threat to any human rights, remember, is a threat to all human rights, because the LGBTQ LMNOP community is a marginalized community. They are discriminated against by you bigots out there. And the fact that there can't be explicit books in the school systems is just discriminating. It is discriminatory, you bigots. These people, why can't they just show up to work, lace up their work boots, Go to work, put in an 8-hour shift, and shut up. Shut up and dribble. Shut up and talk about the game or the sport that you're covering, because that's your job. I don't go to work and complain to my boss that Joe Biden sucks as president. I don't do that because it's not my place at work. My place at work is getting the job done. I don't show up to work and talk about how I think this country's being destroyed by the woke political agenda. I would love to do so, but it's just not the place to do it. There is a place and time. If you feel like you should be speaking out on what's going on in the political climate, why not start a YouTube channel? Genius idea, where you can express your opinions and your beliefs and get the word out there. You got a voice, you got a name recognition. People would love to see a podcast, possibly of yours. Maybe not, I doubt it, but you're on ESPN. Maybe you could garner an audience. That is not the place to do it. When people are tuning in to watch a game, trying to escape their daily life and have a good time for an hour and a half, they don't want to be lectured by some idiot. Here's a clip of J.A. Adande. Now, if they're talking about the LGBTQ community, if they're talking about George Floyd, those are people in communities who are discriminated against and marginalized, and they need equity. But if you're talking about Uyghur Muslims in China, no. They deserve what they're getting. J.A. Adande said, "Who are we to criticize China's human rights record when we have ongoing attacks by the agents of the state against unarmed citizens, and we've got assaults on the voting rights of our people of color in various states in this country. So sports, I think it is possible and it is necessary more than ever to just shut everything out if you are to enjoy the actual games themselves. So we can't worry about Uyghur Muslims who are being put in concentration camps in China because there is 1 or 2 cops out there who use unnecessary force. So that's the only thing we can focus on. And that means that racism is everywhere because there might be 1 cop who uses too much force in a situation that gets out of control. That's what J.A. Adande thinks. ESPN's allowing that type of crap to be spread on their airways. And ESPN, if you don't want to get the vaccine, you better prepare for a lawsuit and litigation because ESPN files motion to dismiss Sage Steele's free speech lawsuit. SportsCenter host Sage Steele is suing ESPN for allegedly violating her free speech rights. But the Disney-owned network filed a motion to dismiss her claims last month. She claims ESPN breached her contract over its reaction to remarks she made in September 2021, a podcast interview where she spoke out against parent company's Disney's vaccine mandate. This is a very interesting case. Sage Steele, very popular on-air anchor. She is not woke. She is not leftist. She is common sense. She is normal. And she said, no, I'm not going to get the vaccine. She went on a podcast that was separate from her ESPN show, and she criticized Disney. Well, Disney, they took her off her show. They suspended her. She is now suing ESPN. This article was written a couple months ago. Well, ESPN is now trying to settle with her for $500,000. She said, hell no, I'm not taking $500,000. I want the whole cake. Good for Sage Steele. Adrian Wojnarowski, Woj, profane response to criticism of NBA's China directive. You see, ESPN has the rights to air NBA games. The NBA is reliant on China to make money. A lot of the NBA's money comes from China. So if the NBA or anybody associated with the NBA criticizes the China Uyghur Muslim discrimination, that's real discrimination. When you're putting people in concentration camps due to their religion, that's religious discrimination. But ESPN and anybody associated with the NBA better not dare speak out against it because that would cost them big money from China. Josh Hawley, Senator Josh Hawley's office sent a press release detailing a letter he planned to send to NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, criticizing the league's decision to limit messages players can wear in their uniforms to pre-approved social justice slogans, while censoring support for law enforcement and criticism of the Chinese Communist Party. You see, during the social justice warrior nonsense, the NBA players were allowed to wear social justice messages on the back of their uniform, but the NBA prohibited NBA players from wearing anti-discrimination messages regarding the Uyghur Muslim population in China. Wojnarowski, who is arguably ESPN's most prominent reporter and breaks a bunch of NBA news on Twitter that his messages have been dubbed Woj bombs, apparently didn't appreciate Holly's message. F you, Wojnarowski responded, according to Holly, who shared an image of the email on Twitter. So Woj sent Josh Hawley an email that just read F you because he's mad that Hawley doesn't like that NBA players and anybody associated with the NBA isn't allowed to speak out against China's stance on Muslims. They're discriminating and killing Muslims. So he sent Josh Hawley this email. Why would Woj care? Because Woj is reliant on China's money. He's getting that China money. He's getting that yen, baby. He's getting that yen. Another one. ESPN pushed the Bubba Wallace hoax. Bubba Wallace said somebody, NASCAR driver, black dude, Bubba Wallace said somebody tied a noose around the garage that one of his cars was located in, one of his race cars. It ended up being a gigantic fake hoax, but ESPN pushed this story like it was the biggest story of all time. Every headline on ESPN.com was Bubba Wallace. They were holding moments of silence. They were talking about how brave he was. It ended up being a pull cord for the garage to lower and raise the garage doors. It was a made-up story. It was fake. They didn't want to recant any of their stories. They didn't want to offer a correction. They just pushed the story, and when it turned out to be fake, they didn't say that it was fake. They continued to propagate fake woke news. Here's a video of the whole nonsense right here. This is what they were pushing.
I just wanted to stand with him during the national anthem to show my support for him, and was appalled by what I had learned. And then as drivers got involved, I think crew members, team managers, team owners, it really started to snowball within a very short period of time.
Fake. I'm not gonna watch this. It was all fake. It was all fake, and Twitter notes said a rope was found, was a mistake for news, and had been there for months. It was fake. It wasn't real. ESPN pundit Jemele Hill calls Trump a white supremacist. Jemele Hill is no longer with ESPN. I believe she's with The Atlantic. Actually, she was just fired from The Atlantic. But she used to work for ESPN, and they allowed her to bash Donald Trump consistently on their airways. Imagine if a white dude who worked for ESPN was bashing Obama left and right. How do you think that would play at ESPN? But they let her keep her job. They let her to continue to spew woke nonsense on their airways. And that's what's costing ESPN billions of dollars in potential profits, potential revenue. That's why Disney is looking to sell ESPN. There's talks that Disney is trying to get out from under of the sinking ship that is named ESPN. Let me know what you think about this news in the comments. If you're new around here, subscribe to the channel. We're taking on the woke left head on. I love you guys, and I'll catch you in the next video. Until next time, peace.